So your fans can be your greatest promotional vehicle if you treat them right. They will work for free. In fact, they will pay you to work for you because they're going to come to your shows and buy tickets. They're going to buy merch. They're going to stream your music. So they're going to give you revenue in order to work for you. What a phenomenal exchange for an artist. All you have to do as the artist is treat them right. You know, build that bond, stay after and talk to them. Go to your DMs and answer things back. And in my management days, we used to do this all the time, where myself or the artist would always be online and just talking to the fans. And, you know, once you build a little bit of a connection with them, you can ask them for favors and they will deliver. You know, if a fan is DMing you and you're responding back and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're actually talking to me.
In electronic dance music, success isn't just about talent. It's about how you handle pressure, visibility, and leadership as your career grows. Psych Drop is a psychology driven podcast that explores the inner demands of building and sustaining success in electronic dance music. I'm Dr. Sunni, a performance psychologist, consultant, and executive coach, working with DJs and industry leaders who are navigating responsibility, growth, and high stakes decisions. Through in-depth conversations with touring artists, label founders, and music industry executives, Psych Drops explores how people think, decide, and sustain success on stage, behind the scenes, and beyond the DJ booth. This is Psych Drop. And today we have with us Chris Maltese, and he currently serves as the GM, label, and artist relations at Vidya. Over the course of his career, he spent close to a decade at MTV as a senior writer and producer. He launched and ran an artist management company, was a partner at a large publisher and management company called Primary Wave, ran an in-house record label, and was the head of the US for Paris-based distribution company called Believe, owners of TuneCore. Working with artists and their teams that span from A-list to developing artists, Chris has seen all sides of the industry for over 25 years. So really excited to have him here today. Chris, you bring so much experience to our podcast and really happy to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your experience on different sides and, you know, what you're doing now. So I'm wondering, just for context, if you can give us a little bit of a background about what you actually do currently at Vidya day to day.
As you said, I mean, I'm the GM of label and artist relations. For lack of a better term, it's kind of like our A&R team, right? So the label and artist relations team is really the ones that are going out there and signing the artists and the labels to be our clients, so that we can not only distribute their work but help them build businesses. Vidya is, for the most part, a pretty B2B focused distributor, which we can get into. But long story short, we're the ones kind of bringing the clients in and then overseeing that relationship as we go. So a lot of what I personally do is I take a lot of calls. I'm having calls all the time where I'm basically speaking to potential clients and then figuring out, like, is this a good partner for us? What are the needs of this client? And then if it is somebody that I think we should be partnering with, whether it's, an individual artist or a label, who on my team might make the most sense for it, right? I mean, we have some A&Rs that are, only signing dance music, and some that are only signing rock music. And then we have others that are a little bit more generalists. I'm kind of playing quarterback in terms of taking information in and then running those plays and sort of figuring out, okay, who should we pass this to? And then separately, I also, have my own clients that I have a roster that I've signed personally, and I oversee those deals and those relationships and make sure that, we're keeping the train on the track and we're adding value wherever we can. And then outside of that, again, like you said, the experience and the decades in the business have brought a lot of knowledge and relationships. So I'm constantly, trying to utilize my relationships and bring in third-party partners, whether it's, an outside sync company for us to partner with, or maybe there's a new, data platform that we should maybe be subscribing to, and, things like that, where I can kind of help put some processes and some more muscle behind the company so that we're operating, to the best of our ability, and we can deliver as best as we can for all of our clients.
Wow. So I think it sounds like you're really doing a lot of different things. I know you've been on different sides of the business, but even currently with your role right now, like you said, you're playing quarterback, and that sounds like a lot. And, really helping. The relationships are key here, building those relationships with different pieces, whether that's the artist or the labels, or like you said, a sync company or something like that, is key to what you're doing, and making those relationships work and getting people who fit together.
Yeah, that's a lot of what it is, right? I mean, this is a very, to probably hear me say this a few times over the course of this podcast, but we live in, we're working in a very human being industry. And I think that sometimes gets forgotten, just how important human connection and relationships are. So, if you've been in the industry for decades, you're going to have relationships all over the place, and I'm fortunate enough to have those and have maintained good relationships. So I obviously want to utilize those to help my own team. And I'm also, to be quite honest, I'm definitely like a big processes guy. So I'm constantly, I'm a consumer, right? Just like everybody. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, constantly listening to music, constantly reading and staying up on things, and then figuring out, okay, like what else can I adapt into the company? What kind of processes can I put in place to help us optimize? So it is a lot of, juggling. There's a lot of different tasks. There's approving deals and making sure that, we're doing the right ones and at the right financial level and commitment. And then there's also the creative side. I mean, I have some clients that want to talk about, hey, who should we use for remixes, or can you give me mix notes on this? And, those aren't typically things a distributor would be doing in terms of like the bullet points of the services that they offer. But if I can add value and in any way, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, it's a lot. I'm blessed because I thoroughly enjoy what I do for a living. Not everybody, I know can say that, but I feel like I'm in a really good position. I've worked hard to get here, but I love it. You know what I mean? So a lot of the time, as much as it is, and it can be heavy at times, I do still find it really enjoyable. So I don't look at, I don't typically look at a Monday morning much differently than I would look at like a Friday. You know what I mean? This, certain times certain seasons, obviously, you kind of want to get outside a little bit, but again, I am really blessed. I do enjoy it. It is a lot. There's a lot of different facets to what we're doing and what I'm doing, but it's all good. I can't say enough about the business that we're in.
I agree with what you're saying. I think the loving what you do is so important. I feel the same way. And what I noticed, though, that I think stood out, and I think maybe a lot of people don't, or maybe a lot of people struggle with balancing these three things. You mentioned that, you're balancing process with relationships and the creative side. And I see that as a challenge for many artists who either tend to lean heavily more on one piece than the other. So I'm curious to know about how you figured out these are the three things you need to balance it, and how you do it.
Yeah, I don't know that there's like one way of really operating, in balancing all that and balancing all of those three things. But the word balance is really key there because you kind of have to have all, right? Especially in a position like mine. You do need to be creative. You have to have taste. You have to understand, what's good and what's not, what's working and what isn't. You have to be able to read data. So you have to, I do think that you have to have a strong balance across the board, many different facets of an industry and your own personal work. I personally am somebody that likes to work backwards, meaning most of the time, again, because I'm very process driven, very, organized. I like to figure out whatever, whether it's an individual artist that I'm talking to, or it's, you know, 2027 goals for the company. I like to figure out what the end goals are and then sort of work backwards to figure out, okay, well, what are the steps that we have to take to get there? And when you do that and you can kind of break things down into much more bite-sized, tasks or things to do, the end goal may not seem so far away. It may take a while to get there, but if you can balance, if you can find the time to be creative, and then find the time to be organized, and then find the time to build your relationships, if you're working on all three of those things simultaneously, it's going to be a lot easier to kind of knock down those steps, right? There are certain times where I will put in my schedule, I'll block out, I do this at least once a week, an hour just to search and listen and, hear what are some new things that are coming out, what new artists are out there, what songs are getting playlisted, and, what are the culturally speaking, like what's being relevant, what artists am I starting to see over and over again. I will spend time just to do that. Separately, I will take time in my schedule and put it in my calendar. I'm going to take an hour just to figure out, okay, we got this single coming out with so and so in 3 or 4 weeks. Like, what steps do we need to take? Where else can we get exposure? Do we have the instrumental? Did I get that to the sync team yet? Like, all of the things from an organization standpoint, I still put that in my schedule, and I try to focus specific time on specific things, and that really allows me to, again, kind of just go down the checklist and, like, okay, did that, yep, okay, did that. And it's a little less burdensome when you look at like overall goals. How do you get there? Again, those bite-sized things, staying organized and focusing on one thing at a time. I think it's just, yeah, it makes everything a little bit easier to create that path to success.
Absolutely. I agree with scheduling and blocking things out. I think that's a great strategy for getting things done and making sure you make that time, like you said, to look at what's new out there, to, stay up on certain things, to be organized, to focus on strategy. I think it requires different parts of the brain, right? So you need to block these times out and make sure you get to it, one, right? Because I think, like you said, I use the word balance. I'm not necessarily a fan of the word balance because I don't think it's always balanced. It's probably almost never balanced, especially in this industry. But
Yeah.
I do think that can help. And I also love what you said about what is the end goal, right? Because this is something I'm always asking artists and executives that I work with, right? What is our end goal? And then from there, it can be so much easier to work backwards from there, and develop goals and action steps that are smaller, right, than the larger goals. Because I think a lot of times people have a large goal, but they never get there because there's no strategy involved. They haven't done the work to reverse engineer it, break it down into small action steps that you're completing, whether that's daily, weekly, that build up to move you in the direction of the goal.
Yeah, 100%. And I speak to so many artists, and it's, a lot of the times, if you ask an artist, especially developing artists, like, well, what's your end goal? Like, where do you want to get to? Like the go-to answer is, well, I want to be the biggest artist in the world, right? Like, I want to be the biggest in my genre, right? And that's all well and good, and not to, like, diminish that. It's rare when you hear, well, I want to get to here. In order to do that, I want to make sure that by the end of this year I can sell out this room, and then by midway through next year I'm getting booked on this festival, and you know at this time, at 3 singles from now, I want to have double the streams that I had on my last one. Like, when you can break it down into very, like, organized bits, it shows as an artist, like, it shows that you're putting real thought into what's going on, or you and your team, right? I say artist, it could be the team as well.
Right.
Um, and those, to be completely honest, like, those conversations, and those artists or those teams, those are like the attractive ones to work with, because it shows that they have business sense. It shows that they're not just like, you know, that they have no clue as to, like, how this actually works, and that there are real steps. So as long as you're concentrating on the steps, I think it's good. And I also think it's kind of a first world problem if you create, the steps that you're going to take, but then you have to adjust because something is going really well. I would say it's a conversation I have often when we're talking about, hey, should we do this deal? Like, what do you have? What are you sitting on? Like, what do you have, like, that's ready to go? How are we going to roll this out? If an artist says, well, I have this next single, like, I want to do this single, but let's do a deal for a 12-song album. I'm like, cool, but you have one song. So like if I only put out one song, like we don't have a way to capitalize on that because you don't have everything else ready. What I would rather do is have you say, "Hey, I have 12 songs. What should we do?" And then we can figure out, okay, well, let's build your algorithm because you're developing, right? And the way we're going to build your algorithm is through consistency. So let's, slot it every 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to have a new release so that we can build your algorithm. And God forbid something really takes off. Well, now it's a first world problem if we have to push all the other releases back because now we're going to focus more time on this. But if we
Right.
don't, your algorithm's not going to keep dropping because we're just going to keep building on it. And so, there's conversations like that where again, it's the end goal is to get to the album and get a certain level of growth. But the baby steps are building that algorithm so that, along the way, before you get to that full project, you can just constantly, compound what's going on in your algorithm so that when you get to that project, the algorithm is going to do a lot of the work for you and push it in front of so many more eyes and ears than if you would have just, released it from the beginning. So having those steps and having those plans, I think is it's just going to set you up again for success better because it shows like it shows your partners like, hey, I'm taking the time to think about how we're going to do this and I've got everything ready to go.
Right, right. And you could actually track, I know you said you're a process person. You can then track what are you accomplishing? What small steps are you getting done as you move forward, right? That shows their investment. I think it shows to the artists themselves, what progress am I making? Right? You can track your own progress, you can celebrate your wins, the things that you're getting done. And I think also too what you did say, I feel like is key, right? It's the one piece is having the plan, like the goals with the plan and the action steps is the one piece. And then at the same time, the other skills involved in that are being flexible and adaptable because this industry is constantly changing. What's happening with your growth is changing too, right? Can't always predict it. We could plan, but then you have to constantly really reevaluate and determine where you need to change and focus more or focus less. So it's not just you create this plan and then you just look at the plan every day and do the steps.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like we're in an industry where like the only thing that's consistent is change. If you looked at how this industry has evolved to where we are today, even from a few years ago, it just works so much different than it did, in years past. I mean, it really wasn't that long ago if you think about it, where editorial playlisting was like the thing, right? And I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many times, I would have conversations with artists of their teams where, if the song came out and we got new music Friday, it was a successful campaign. And if the song came out and we didn't get new music Friday, it was a disaster. Like there were so many irrational, thoughts about editorial that I think everyone got wrapped up in this thing of like either this team can get everyone to support me or they can't because they're not good. And now we see like just how false that is. And again, we're reading data all the time.
Mm.
We see it like, not to say that editorial isn't great. I mean, it can certainly help, especially in the beginning, but algorithmic playlists are what matters now. And we can A and B it and see the streams that are coming in from algorithmic playlists versus editorial playlists, and it's it's pretty night and day. Like I think a lot of people would be really surprised if they really like looked under the hood. I would actually rather, and in fact, I just had this conversation with an artist. I would rather be in a position where a single came out and we got little to no playlist from the beginning versus it depend and this is, of course this depends on the artist, but I would rather be in a position where we got little to none that allowed us to organically build that thing and get it to grow to the point that if we started getting real editorial in week 7, we're doing something right. And now this thing can continue to grow. Whereas on the flip side, if a song comes out and on week 1, we get a whole bunch of editorial, and then come week 2, when all the playlists flip over, if the streams go down to the basement, well, guess what? Like it's going to be really hard to convince the DSPs to give you more love. Like they gave you the love in the beginning. Now it fully dropped off. So it showed that it was only, getting the streams because of, the editorial placements. And now what are you going to do to like get it all the way back up? Because you're not going to get that support from the DSPs again, unless you have some kind of like crazy viral moment. So yeah, just even the way that the industry has changed. I think to be honest, I think it all goes back to the consumer. I think the consumer behavior has changed over the years. And to be honest, the consumers always win. Like they tell us, how things operate, right? If you remember how many bands there were that were like, streaming, we're not gonna allow, our albums to be out there for streaming. You don't get paid. Well, you know what I mean? Like the consumers are telling you differently. Like this is how it works. So you could either get on board or not. But yeah, the consumers are always going to dictate how this industry is run, and it's up to us within the industry to adjust and continue to change to make sure that we're, super serving the fans and the consumers.
Right. So, in terms of fans, what are you seeing now that's working in terms of building a fan base? What do fans want?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that fans, here's the thing about fans that I think artists should really understand. If you can nurture your fans, if you can create real relationships with your fans, and I don't mean on like an overly personal level, but if you can build a bond with your fans in the right way, your fans will be the greatest staff that you ever have. And I say that because when you create a connection with a fan, right? When you stay after your set is over and you talk to them and you take a selfie and you give them a hug and they tell you a personal story about how they heard your song and then this happened, what you've now done is you've made them lifers, right? They're going to be with you for life. So that fan is now a fan of the artist and not a fan of the song. There's a huge difference between being the fan of an artist and being the fan of an artist's song, right? Songs are going to come and go. The hits can come and they can go. We've all heard the term like one hit wonder, right? Everybody could like a song, but not the artist.
Right.
When you create a lifer, that lifer is going to be there forever because you've now created a connection with them. They're going to talk about you. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to show other people your music. They're going to post about you. They are going to promote you. What do you pay for when you go to a label? Promotion, right? So your fans can be your greatest promotional vehicle if you treat them right. They will work for free. In fact, they will pay you to work for you because they're going to come to your shows and buy tickets. They're going to buy merch. They're going to stream your music. So they're going to give you revenue in order to work for you. What a phenomenal exchange for an artist. All you have to do as the artist is treat them right. Build that bond, stay after and talk to them. Go to your DMs and answer things back. And in my management days, we used to do this all the time where myself or the artist would always be online and just talking to the fans. And, once you build a little bit of a connection with them, you can ask them for favors and they will deliver. If a fan is DMing you and you're responding back and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're actually talking to me. You can say like, hey, would you mind, I saw your post about so-and-so. Would you mind putting this song in your next post? They're going to do it. You know what I mean? Like if they're really your fan, like they're going to do that. So, I think that the artists that are the most successful, especially the ones that are broken over the last few years, are the ones that become relatable. And you build loyalty through relatability. Once they know that you're a real person and you've connected with them, they no longer just look at you as like some far off star sitting on, some throne somewhere. They can touch you. They can speak to you. They understand that you are one of them. That's what they want, is that relatability. Even if you're the biggest star in the world, they want you to understand that you're a human being and you're relatable. So yeah, to me, I've seen it time and time again where the most successful and the ones that stay for the long haul beyond a hit or beyond the first few releases are the ones that have fans who can talk about them, who have stories, because there has been this connection. The artist has gone out of their way to make the artist feel like they're part of something. So it's a little bit underrated. A lot of that hand-to-hand combat, so to speak, of like talking one-on-one with a fan, a lot of it can go over some artists' heads. But yeah, the ones that put that time in and can show appreciation and show that they're human and ask for help and stuff like that, you're just creating those lifers, and the more lifers you have, they will bring more in, and more and more. So it's like, again, your artists can, I mean, sorry, your fans can be your greatest staff.
I've seen the exact same thing, and it all ties back into what you said earlier of the most important thing is human connection, right? People want to be a fan of somebody that they can connect with, whether that is at a show, right? After the
Yeah.
show, connecting with you when you're on stage and after, right? You said taking that selfie, that means so much. And just saying hi to people, to the fans after goes so far. And then that other component of doing that online too, actually
Yeah.
interacting, engaging, and showing your humanness, right? Because we want to follow and be fans of people that we understand, we get, we can relate to. That's what creates that lifer fan. It's like these parasocial bonds that are created where we feel like we understand them. We're a fan of the artist no matter what song they put out. We may love a song, we may love every song, we may not like a song, but we are a fan no
Right.
matter what.
Yeah, and it's, to be honest, it's not, it's not a new concept, right?
No.
Like it's really been around for a long time. I can remember back when I was working at MTV, I started managing this artist on the side who
Mhm.
who eventually he had a top 5 pop hit, and that was what allowed me to leave MTV and start a full-time management company. But in those early days, and I'm about to date myself, so uh, we'll I'll paint this as pretty as I can. Back in the MySpace days, with MySpace, there was a feature where, you could put a song on your profile, just one song, like, on your profile, and you could DM people. And this artist I was managing, he was on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, and we sort of figured it out where we were. I don't want to say it was 24 hours around the clock, but it was close. Like between, you know, him being on West Coast time, me being on East Coast time, we had it down so that one of the two of us was almost always online on MySpace. And what we would do is, as a fan, would send some sort of a message in to make sure that they knew it wasn't just like a bot. We would respond, but we would respond using their name. And we would say something personal to them of like, oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. That really means a lot to me. By the way, I love that picture of you, blah, 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 and, at that other show or whatever. Just something so that they know, like, oh, this is a real human being that's like talking to me. On the second, like, then, the fan would respond and say, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking to me. On the second one, that's when we would say, yeah, thanks, what up, so and so. By the way, would you mind putting my song on your profile this week? Like, I'm just trying to get some more people to hear it. Of course, they would do that. And what ended up
Mhm.
happening was that song would get played to all of that person's friends, and it just started to spider out to the point that he became the number one, unsigned artist on MySpace. And from there, I was able to get a showcase in New York, showcase in LA, labels everywhere, blah, blah, blah. And then, the rest was history. But that same concept still works today, where if you can just show you're a human being, you can talk to your fans, you can create these connections. There's no telling like how far they can take you, because again, in the end, the consumer wins. So if there is demand for you, the rest of the industry just has to, react and catch up to make sure that they're being super served.
I agree. I remember the MySpace days. It's really funny that I was just having a conversation about this last night, about having that one song. I had this Sean Paul
Yeah.
song on my MySpace profile, dating
Yeah.
myself. Um,
Love
but
it.
it's weird timing that you're bringing this up. But I agree with what you mean by building that connection first, though, because I think sometimes artists go right in with the ask, right?
Yeah.
Asking somebody to do something when, and that can feel inauthentic, let's just say. So I think
100%.
building that connection, online and in person. Right now we have the power of social media since the MySpace days, and now forget it with all of the different platforms.
Yep.
But building that connection and then, asking for help. I think everyone can relate to that. We all need to be able to ask for help in our, in our lives, and especially artists, but asking people who are already connected to you, who as an artist providing value to, right? They feel a connection, they like what you're doing, they relate to you, and then of course they're willing, like you said, to come out to shows, to create a reel with your new track. I think that's so much more natural than when artists spam people and, are asking them for something and it doesn't feel real. And I think it can even lead to unfollows.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's a value exchange, right? So, you know, it's like asking like why would a fan spend money on a meet and greet? Well, they're willing to part with their money to come and spend a moment with you. That's going to bring value to them, right?
Right.
So the artist needs to understand from their side, well, what's the value exchange for me? Yes, I'm receiving this money, but I've got to be able to provide value to them and give them what they're looking for, right? Like give them a moment or give them, a conversation, a photo, whatever it is. That again, I know I said this before, so not to repeat myself, but that's how you create the lifers. And I think that if, as an artist, you can, you know, step back and take a look at like everything that's going on in your world, whether it's touring, it's streaming, it's licensing for film and television, you know, it's brand deals. All of that is due to the fandom that you've created and the demand that you've created. So,
Mhm.
you know, going to those people, uh, being a human being, I mean, it's only going to bring you more. So I actually think that artists who, the same way previously I was talking about scheduling out time to do nothing but listen or nothing but be creative or nothing but, organize myself. Artists that actually schedule out time for fan connection, I can almost guarantee you are going to get further because they're going to spend more time creating lifers and creating, a quote unquote staff that will be there for them through the thick and thin.
I couldn't really agree with that more. And I think it goes back to what you're saying. It's like the human connection and the value add, right? Whether that's relationships you're building in the industry, because that's so important too, but also equally important is the relationships you're building with your fans, right? This isn't
Yeah.
a one-way thing, whether, it's an industry relationship or a fan relationship. I think that exchange piece is so important. And I think often missed at times.
100%. I mean, you kind of nailed it. It is often missed, but without repeating myself too much, I do think that most artists should pay more attention to how can I provide value to my fans outside of just
Mhm.
releasing music.
Right.
How else can I provide value to my fans?
And along those lines of providing value and the way the industry's changed, like you said, not even just since you've been in the industry, but even over the past few years, what do you think has changed psychologically for artists over the years?
I mean, a lot.
Mhm.
I mean, psychologically, I think what's changed for artists now is that, the rollout strategies are completely different than they used to be, right? So,
Mhm.
again, I think consistency is kind of key right now. And psychologically, if you're always thinking about, well, I have to release, I have to release, I have to release, you're kind of on this like hamster wheel, right? Where you're just never going to get off. And that's, again, going back to what I said earlier, I feel like you need to schedule time, like you have to be organized. I think you need to schedule time for creating music. I think you need to schedule time to go play your shows. And I think you need to schedule time to not and live life and recharge. We've seen so many artists, especially in the electronic space, that just get completely burnt out, and part of that, to be honest, is because of how cost effective it is to be a touring artist in the electronic space. If you were a band and you had 5 members and you had all this gear and this crew, and it costs a lot. You can't play multiple shows in like a night. Whereas a DJ, like if you have a laptop and your USB stick, and how many times have we seen Diplo play like 2 different sets in 2 different states, and in the over the course of a few hours? Like it's
Right.
so easy to, if you have that demand, it's so easy to burn yourself out because you'll just keep saying yes because you're going to get a nice check and you're going to play this show. You can do so many of those but you're not really taking the time to like actually live life and experience things to be able to write about and produce music about and share on socials, and also be both mentally and physically healthy enough to kind of keep up with the lifestyle. So I think that I know you're asking about like psychologically what's changed. I think that health has been a big, discussion point within this side of the industry because of the ease of touring and the lack of cost when it comes to touring. So I think psychologically artists in the electronic space need to keep consistent while also being able to recharge, to live life, to have downtime, and and like we said before, like find a bit of a balance, and the balance might be different for everybody. um I personally don't know how John Summit plays the amount of shows that he plays and releases the amount that he releases and runs a label and is also running marathons. Like, at some point, like, I'm just like waiting, like, oh my God, is this guy gonna just take a year off because he's just gonna need to like completely recharge? Like, I don't know. I give the guy credit. Yeah, I think the consistency is probably the biggest thing, because years ago that wasn't the way it was. You could, create an album and like tour off of that for like a year or so. And if don't get me wrong, if you're an A list, if you're Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, Adele, sure, you can still do that. You can create the album, go tour on it for a year and a half, and then go away for two, and know that when you come back, you're going to be just as big. But not everybody is Beyonce, right? Like, most artists can't do that. So, being that the electronic space is a very singles based market, most artists are, just pumping songs out, which is understandable because, going back to the algorithm thing, you want to keep building, but you do have to schedule time to be able to just, get mentally and physically right. Otherwise, it's probably going to be short lived.
Yes, I really have seen the conversation change over the years. There has been that shift to being more focused on the mental and physical side in order to keep going, avoid burnout, and like you said, scheduling in the breaks,
Mhm.
whether that is for health and wellness or whether that's just to do different things so you can stay in a creative space. And I see so many artists, especially those who are gaining momentum and really busy and in demand, have a really hard time with being able to say, I'm taking this break, I'm making this time, when there is a pressure that they feel to just keep going and be on all the time.
I also think too, it's kind of like, again, being in a very singles based market, some songs are going to go and some songs are not, right?
Right.
And I think that when you're in your sort of rollout strategy and you're putting together, okay, here's how the releases are going to line up, you're gonna know like which songs you're gonna kind of want to pour extra gasoline on, and which ones you might not, like which ones might be maybe just a club record or something like that. um but again, being organized enough to be able to schedule them well in advance, like I said, going back to the example of like, if an artist tells me they have 12 songs, it's like, cool, let's get them uploaded and set for distribution every 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it is. And if we need to push things back, we can. But if you approach it that way, where you come with all of your assets kind of ready to go, you have the ability to schedule them out. And you also have the ability to schedule, I'm going to do nothing for the month of March except put my toes in the sand. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can do that. Granted, you probably don't want to do that, around festival season, because that's probably where you're going to be making a lot of your money if you're a bigger DJ. But at the same time, like, the more prepared you are, again, if you have the time for creation, you create everything you need for the next whatever 8 months, 12 months, then you have your time for your rollout. It gives you that ability to kind of live both lives, right? In certain modes you're going to be in, like, hey, let's tour, let's go play these shows, let's get in front of as many people. And other times you're going to be like, I just want to relax and make music on my own schedule. And both of those things, I think, are really needed if you want to have a long-term career.
Completely agree. And like you said, knowing what to focus on and when, having that plan, and also planning for the health piece, I
Mhm.
think are absolutely essential for building a sustainable career. There's so many pieces to the psychological side of this, as I'm always preaching. I think
Yeah.
there's so many components to what you're doing behind the scenes and how you're developing your flexibility, your adaptability, your planning skills. And I think that a lot of times, especially when things are getting really busy, it can be easy to, you know, easily just stop focusing on some of the most important things. And I think, like you said, over the years, there's been this shift where we are seeing how important touring health is, how important it is to make time to be creative, because so many artists get stuck when they don't take breaks, when they don't slow down.
I think also it's kind of like looking at the relationship that the artist has with the industry and the work that they do. It's almost like being in, in a romantic relationship, right? You want to make sure that as the artist, you stay in love, right? You stay in love with what you're doing. The moment that you start to feel like, oh my God, this is such a burden. I can't believe I have to do this anymore, but everybody's telling me I have to. And the people around me are telling me that I need to get this out and I have to do. That's when the problems are going to occur. And that's when you're going to start to resent what you do. And you probably, if you're not enjoying it as much, people are going to probably pick up on that, meaning your fans, the work that you do, right? So you want to make sure that you stay in love with it. And if you think about it like a human being connection, if and your significant other were trapped in an igloo for a year, at a certain point, you might not love each other as much, right? Because you're just constantly in each other's faces with very little space to go. So, you might need a break every once in a while. But if you were in that igloo and then once a week you got to go out and do whatever, or you went on a trip and you came back, that space is actually healthy, right? It's gonna create you missing that person. It's the same exact thing. I think that as an artist, you need to have time in it and you need to have time away from it in order to stay in love with it, because the love and the passion is what drives everything. I think we started this conversation by me saying, like, I'm blessed, I love what I do. So I don't really get burnt out, but I also have hobbies and I also have a family and I also do things outside of the music industry that, when Monday morning comes, like, I'm not upset about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy to get back at it. So yeah, the artists that can figure out how to stay in love with what they do, they're going to have long-term success much more than the ones that are just grinding, 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 because those are typically the ones that get burnt out.
Definitely. I think I have this conversation a lot. And I had Hess on the podcast in the most recent episode, and we were talking
Okay.
a lot about this, how important it is to stay grounded in the why you started this in the first place. Why are you even here, and bringing it back to that. And I like your comparison of comparing it to romantic relationships. It really does take work to make sure you stay connected to that why, and to stay completely in it. I think does require space, right? Space to reflect, space to do other things, and then again, always bringing it back, because once you lose that passion and become disconnected from the why, you can really feel like you're on a hamster wheel. You can lose sight of your strategy. You can really get stuck. And I think that's one of the things that I see lead to burnout.
It leads to burnout, and it also, I think, leads to a lack of creativity. I think that when you are feeling like, I am in love with this process, I love what I'm doing, I'm waking up, I'm excited to go do this, you're in that, in that flow state, right? You're in a creative space where you're going to get the best out of yourself. Again, you wake up and you think about, like, oh, I can't believe I have to go do this again.
Right.
Your creativity is not going to be there. So yeah, I think it's just going to hurt your career overall if you can't, figure out how to balance that in a way that works for you, so that you are just staying in love.
Absolutely. I think one of the key signs that burnout is starting to happen is you're feeling less productive. You're feeling less passion about what you
Right.
do. And I think that's something that people really need to be aware of, and to really be proactive about what you're doing to prevent yourself from getting there in the first place. And like you said, you mentioned, I think, the hobbies outside of this and relationships outside of the industry, which I think are really, really important. I think sometimes people can be so in love with the music that they don't have things outside of the music. That becomes everything. And I think you really need other things. Your brain needs other things to keep you in the creative space. So I think that doing that is so important. You have to have outside things where your brain is having new experiences, doing something different to then be able to shift back and stay creative.
I fully agree, and it doesn't mean that you can't be obsessed with what you do. I think being obsessed is a very positive thing. It means that you are willing to go the extra mile, and you want to be doing it all the time. And that's I don't think that there's anything wrong with being obsessed with what you do. But yes, having the understanding that you need to every once in a while unplug and go put your mind on something else, it's only going to recharge you so that when you come back at it again, you're going to be better, you're going to be fresher, you're going to feel creative. It's just going to put you in a better mental state to get a better product at the end of the day, which is essentially what every artist is looking.
Exactly. I agree that being obsessed can be a good thing. It only becomes a bad thing when you are so focused on it that it's to the exclusion and forgetting about your health, your well-being, and relationships, things outside of it. I think that's where it can then become unhealthy. And
Yeah.
then that's where then that negativity piece and, just becoming unhappy with what you do can really start to be an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And for a lot of people, you know, like I'm personally like I'm a gym guy, right? Like I wake up every morning, whether it's I'm going to the gym to lift weights or I'm just doing like my cardio at home.
Mhm.
Either way, like I always start my day every day with exercise, which is just releasing endorphins. You know what I mean? And so it's getting getting things out of my system. It's clear. It's making everything really clear. Whether it's exercise or something else that you do, I think if you have a bit of a system, right? If you have a bit of a pattern that you go through and understanding what that is, that's really healthy for you. The problem, I think, is that, especially in the electronic space with the bigger acts that are touring all the time, is that having that schedule can be tough because you're constantly traveling. You might have a set that starts at 3 in the morning. Like, so getting into that routine can be a lot harder, right? So again, I think that if you schedule your time to do nothing or to just live life, that's when you can kind of get into those routines, which will set you up for the long term. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, like it's no, I don't think anybody ever came into this space or as an artist and thought like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a big touring DJ, it's going to be really easy. It's not. You know what I mean? It's anything but. Because if you think about it too, it's like there's no such thing as just like a touring DJ. Like if you're a DJ at this point, you're also a producer. And if you're a producer, you're creating music, you're collaborating, you're figuring out rollouts. And yeah, you're booking shows, you have a staff that you're working with. Like you can't just think that like there, I mean, I don't know of any at this point of any like big name DJs who are just playing other people's music. There's a real ceiling with that. You know what I mean? Like, sure, there are some out there, but there's a ceiling. If you want to get to be one of the bigger names and the bigger earners, like you're creating your own music too. So there's multiple skill sets there that are needed to get to that level. And yeah, again, you need to be able to experience life to be able to give your best to all of those aspects of the career.
Definitely. And I think, learning to manage yourself in these ways, whether that's the health and wellness, the scheduling piece, the building consistency and taking care of yourself can help with touring, which is so unpredictable and requires not just being able to manage yourself, but lead others, right? Because you do have a team, you have other people you're responsible for, and you need to be in a good place in order to be able to keep them in a good place, right? Because the responsibility grows so much once you are reaching these higher levels. And I think having the self awareness and then developing the emotional intelligence piece is so key to being successful and being able to do this and do it well in the long run.
To that point, I think that being a leader, right? Like you have to understand as the artist, right? You have this team around you, right? It's managers, it's booking agents, it's a lawyer, it's a PR person, it's you have all these different facets around you. The thing is that they're going to look to you as the kind of key decision maker, right? Because it's your career, they all work for you. So if you're giving the vibes of like, yes, everything is fine, like just on, go, 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 they're going to keep booking you. They're going to keep telling you got to do this. Like, you as the artist have to really understand where you're at and sort of lead that conversation and sort of say like, hey guys, yeah, we're going to do all this, but by the way, like, we need to schedule out time for me to not. A lot of times I think, and we've all heard stories, but you know, a good manager will is one that like understands what the artist needs, even if the artist doesn't understand, right?
Mhm.
And so, if I don't, not to use John Summit as an example again, but like, because the guy's just always everywhere, he's just always on, he's like a machine. If there's an artist that's like that, with it's just always go, 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 the manager has to be able to kind of assess, like, yeah, he's go, 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 but like, should we start to, what should we look at, like a hole in the schedule, like maybe let's get this guy on vacation, there's got to be good human beings around, around an artist. If I'm an artist, I want to make sure I have good human beings around you or around me that have my best interest, always at the forefront, right? Because it's not always about like, yes, you have to, like, as the artist, you have to sometimes feed other families, right? People are depending on you to go out there and work and make the money, and so be it. But working backwards, if you look at the long haul, like, well, what's my long-term goal? If my long-term goal is I want to be, the biggest artist, or I want to, be doing this for 30 years, well, then think about, what you're doing today. How is that going to affect you, down the road? And it's not going to do anybody favors if you're just burning yourself out now. So yeah, I think having a good, I don't know if we haven't really touched too much on that today, but having a really good team around you, and when I say good team, like, yes, knowledgeable in the industry, know how to, release things, know how to move and have relationships, but are also just really good people. I think it's just so important and so underrated.
Definitely. I think team building, we can do a whole episode, and maybe we should, on how to build the right team around you, because I think there's so much involved with that, and just doing it and figuring out as you go. Um, while there's some merit to that, that can be helpful in certain circumstances, there's so many things you can do beforehand to build the right team rather than end up with the wrong team and then, trying to backtrack. And so let's think about that for a future episode.
Yeah.
But I do want to find out, what is one unfiltered truth? What's one thing people don't understand about this industry until they're in it?
One thing people don't understand, again, as a consumer, right? Everybody's a consumer, right? So we all see things from a distance. We all see films, TV shows, music, whatever the entertainment space is. Everybody sees and is exposed to the entertainment business. Unless you're in it, you don't really think all the time about, again, the human beings that are the ones that you're seeing and the ones behind the people that you're seeing. So I think that, once you're in it, you understand how important relationships are. And I think that the people that come into this business and they find some success quickly, and they don't realize that that success is not given forever, this could be short lived. If they come off with an ego, those are typically the people that don't last. Again, been in the business a long time, so I know a lot of people that have come into the business, thought, they made it and they could act in a certain way, and those people are off doing something else now. They're not still here. So I think, again, not to repeat myself, but being a good human being and forming relationships is one of the most important skill sets that you can have if you want to have a lasting career here. So if you're not in it, you probably don't think about it, but whoever the, insert celebrity name or star name or actor or musician name in here, the
Mhm.
people behind them have worked hard to, get that person in a certain position. And in order to work hard to get to that person in a certain position, there's other key relationships. Like, we all kind of need each other. So if you come off as a jerk, no one's going to want to work with you. People remember things when you come off the wrong way. Somebody's going to remember that down the road. And, for me, I was, this is pre, all these apps and stuff, but like, way back in the day, I don't know, 20 years ago, I started an Excel sheet, which I still have to this day. I still keep minimized on my on my computer. And there is a tab for people at labels. There is a tab for managers. There is a tab for publicists, for lawyers, for music video directors, for hair and makeup, for PR, publishers, PROs. I have tabs for everything. And every time I make a new connection, I put their name alphabetically, their email address, and then a little thing about how do I know them? What was the connection point? Like, what did we talk about? Whatever it is. And now, fast forwarding all these years, still to this day, somebody will, pop up in my email and I'll think, oh, I think I know that person. How do I know that person? And I go back and I look at my Excel sheet and there's their name. There's how I knew them from way back when. And now when I address them, I can say, oh yeah, it's great to reconnect. We had that thing back, so and so. So now I can bring up a point that we've already connected, right? So I think, that's like, again, a skill set of like relationships and like being a good person, like also being organized, you know what I mean? And collecting your connections over the years can help. So people are going to want to work with you if you are a good person, or if you have to reach out and ask for help, or you have to ask for advice, or you want to connect some artists together that you guys are working with. That's always helpful if you have a history of being like, quote unquote, one of the good guys, so very long-winded way of saying just be a good person. You know what I mean? That's like the one thing people don't really think about outside of the entertainment industry is just you should try to be a good person because it'll definitely further your career.
Absolutely. And quick question, what do you think matters most? Talent, consistency, or relationships?
That's really hard because if I put them all in a silo, I don't think any of them lead to success. So I think the combination of all three is, to be honest, it's you're probably not gonna succeed unless you have a good combination of three. Like you could have all the talent in the world, but if you're not consistent in releasing and you don't have relationships to get anywhere, who's gonna hear you? And you could have consistency, but if your songs are terrible, like what does it matter? You're just consistently putting out crap. And if you don't have relationships, then it's like, cool, you could have good songs, but like who's helping you get it out there? Like how are you advancing yourself? Because again, we're in a human being business. We need each other. You need other people to help you grow. Nobody's doing this on their own. So I actually do think it's a bit of a cheat answer, but I think you really do need all three because there isn't one that's going to just take you all the way.
Well, I think I like that cheat answer because it was kind of a trick question, right? It really
Yeah.
was. I think, that the combination of those three is the powerful piece to help you to last in this industry. From what I've seen, what makes artists gain momentum and build, say, and sustain their success, they really have to be consistent and be focused on the relationships, whether that's the fan side or the industry side. And I love your strategies about organizing how you meet people and how you stay connected to them. I think that really goes a long way. I mean, I'm sure, I can't imagine how many people you've met over the years. And I think that's a great tool to stay in touch with people and also remember people, which I think means a lot. And I just overall really appreciate this conversation. So happy to have you here today. I think there's so much artists can gain from your experience. And thank you for being here. And thanks for listening to Psych Drop. These conversations that we're having are about understanding what's really happening beneath performance, decisions, and leadership, and how people can actually sustain success as their responsibilities grow in this industry. See you next time on Psych Drop.